Hello, selectors, and welcome to the Life Burst podcast. Today, I don't have my usual co host, which is Tiffany, but instead, I'm joined by Tony. Tony, hi.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
I see you got fifth place at this most recent tournament.
Yeah, I did. I'm the only Akino player up there, actually.
It is very cool to see an Akino list up in cracking the tops.
Yeah.
But yeah, so congratulations, man, on your fifth place. It's where I got in the ceremony prior to this. So, but they at least they extended the Akinos to top eight. So I think you get an Akino this time, or at least, or not an Akino, excuse me, a Arquane.
Archwain.
Yeah, yeah. So you'll get a cool congratulations Arquane among the White Heaven playmat, I believe, is also top 16.
Yeah. Yeah. This is kind of the reason why I decided to play Akino. Wait, haven't playmat? Akino Center. Goes hand in hand.
Ah, no, 100%. It's gonna go very much go with the theme here. So speaking of Akino, man, it's cool that you ran an Akino. It's an unusual choice. I believe every other no limit player was Hirana. Why did you decide to go with Akino?
Well, there are like a few reasons why. One of them is like a waifu reason. I just prefer her over Hirana.
That's fair.
Um, in set two, I was like, I played a lot of Akino, and I vowed, I kind of vowed I'll never touch Hirana, purely because I have another friend that plays Hirana, so I just feed all of my red things to him, and he feeds me white things, and I came towards Akino.
Yeah, I mean, you still have a fair amount of red in this list that I'm looking at here on the
Yeah,
side, but it is got some interesting spicy things too. So let's dive into it. Aside from Akino being just a good waifu reason, it actually is. I played against it in a loot card tournament, and I was relatively surprised at how much it's once a game really dunks on Nova.
yeah, it actually does a lot. Like, in my opinion, I feel like Akino is a bit more aggressive than Hirana, but at the same time keeping like a board that your opponent still has to break.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So here comes my first question here, which is this Glory Grow feels mandatory if you're running no limit. It just does all of the jobs that you want it to do. I don't think we need to even discuss about that. But you're running a Song of Wixoss, which I normally would think is like a more like a Ray piece. But why are you running a Nakino?
Well, it is a rape piece, actually, because I run Divine Majesty over Absolute Zero or
Mm.
the draw two discard one from your opponent. I mean, draw two discard two from your opponent. So I was testing like a lot. It used to be end of turn. I used to play end of turn in this build, and
Mm.
that it worked, but it led me to a lot of 50-50 situations against a lot of decks, which I didn't like.
Mm.
However, um, the I really wanted to play Ray Divine Majesty because it would help me out against the Hirana matchup.
Mm.
But I what helped me against Nova was the Absolute Zero, which was bottom decking or top decking something.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
but when I tried to play Divine Majesty in tournament, like against one of my friends, they were playing Nova. I just got dumpstered on. They just discarded me down to zero, and I'm like, I can down your things, I can stop damage, but I can't open a lane with this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I came to the conclusion like, Song of Recross draws me 3. Ray needs to discard 3. I will always stop 2 damage and open a lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I believe remind me on this because I don't have the card in front of me, but that raise specifically, it opens up like any lane, right? It doesn't matter how big the wall is in front of you.
It the only condition is that it is downed. So whatever's downed, I can remove that and put it at the bottom of the deck.
Well, that's super fair. Not to mention Nova really doesn't hold back on attacking. It's usually trying to run you out of cards out of your hand. So it's usually trying to pair that with vanishing things that are on the field. Well, that's a great idea. And then of course you got the normal Hirana on stage, Hirana stamp, which just do a wonderful job. And it is worth mentioning that with Akino, you do free yourself up to have more defensive L rigs, which can help you against No Limit, right?
Yeah. Before stamp, it was actually the other one where it's vanish a target signy and enter charge one and or draw two,
Hmm.
which was very aggressive and actually like just did so much against Nova for me, but it didn't do much for me against Hirana. So like the majority of this deck is actually just teched against Hirana and like any other aggressive decks.
Yeah, well, that probably came in handy. There was a like everyone I think expected no limit or Nova in this ceremony, and the top 16 had zero Novas.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, all the Hirana players. I really wanted to play against some Hiranas myself. I actually just straight hit all the Nova players, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
okay,
Oh, so
this
you're the
was nice.
reason they're all knocked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So I played Nova and I got I did okay. I 5-2. But I lost against a Tamago Freeze deck, which makes sense for Nova, and I lost against a card jockey that I think potentially, if I didn't make a mistake, I probably could have taken that game. But I ended up going against like five card jockey in a row. It was nuts how much card jockey was just available in those tables. What did you end up playing against? Like, do you remember the numbers?
Yeah. My first three rounds were Novas.
Hmm.
Uh, the fourth round I played against a Lion deck, and I I lost myself. I actually made some misplays that game, but
Hmm. Hmm.
to each their own. Rent free in my head. And then after that, I played against a wolf, which had a nasty four chains of Haniels, and I'm like, I'm gonna get hit by a three.
Yeah, yeah. There's really no chance of not getting hit by a three at that point.
And then after that, I played against another Nova,
Hmm.
and my final matchup was a Ray.
So I guess it was pretty diverse. Yeah, then there was a lot of Ray in the top 16 as well, which I found pretty interesting because, when we last talked to a Ray player, he was like, "Yeah, this is a Nova killer." So this particular meta seemed pretty unkind to Nova, which maybe helped you out in a lot of ways because you said that this deck was teched against No Limit Hirana. So that may have put you in a pretty favorable condition if the since the environment was ripe for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't run into any Hiranas, but it does very well against Nova as well.
Ah, that's fair. Super balanced. Then let's talk about some of your main deck choices here. The interesting ones here are you are running four Falcalors and two He's, which are very defensive choices, and not necessarily in the white red color scheme that the rest of the deck's going for. So I'm guessing is that the tech against Hirana?
Um, yeah, it is. Also, it feeds into the blue color requirement that I need for Ray Divine Majesty because you need one blue.
Oh yeah. You're right. And six is that magic number there. So super cool there. Um, the other stuff that you're running is it looks like Athena is a strange choice. That's just shouting out to me. Can you remind me of what Athena does and why you're using it?
You pay three enter, one white, and you just grab a guard from your trash.
Got it. So it's just and that's fair because
Yeah,
then
and it
that
feeds into my Akino once per game, or just if I need a guard against Hirana, because once per game Hirana, I need two guards.
yep that makes a lot of sense now. Looking at it that way, and then the rest of the stuff seems like pretty normal white or red aggro. It looks like you're running the full set of Arcwanes, so I guess you really valued them.
Yeah. There need at all points of the game, past level three, I just always wanted an arcane on field. Like just in a closed lane, just so my opponent cannot like run it over. I mean, they'll run it over, but they won't be able to do damage in that lane for
Yeah,
that turn.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, plus you've got the congratulations Arcane that you can you can stuff in there.
Yep, 3 more to go. No, I'm just gonna keep one.
Well, it's worth having one of, right? So that way when you find it, you're like, yeah, you're the one. You're the heart of the cards one.
Yeah,
I think they just
maybe I'll
announced
just
that.
throw it in.
Yeah, I mean, I think they also just announced that the box toppers in 04 is going to have alternate Arcwanes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just the
So
thought. Just the
just
thought.
have one of each arcane, but we need one more arcane
Yeah, yeah, we're
to
close.
complete one of each.
We're at 3. We need to get that 4th one, but I bet you they'll have one at some point. Um, okay, so you've got some numbers split here. I want to ask, like you've got 3 Haniels, not 4. Is there a reason why you were like 3's the right number here?
Um, three. I was like struggling for space in my life burst count because I need for sure 4 arcanes,
Mm-hmm.
and I
4
was
guards.
yeah, I felt like I was struggling with like the amount of red units that I could rise Nobunaga on, so I had to add an Asita.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got rid of one of my Deafening Infernos. Honestly, I would have liked it at 4, just for
Yeah,
another red Sita.
yeah,
But
that can make sense.
yeah, but I think the Haniel at 3 is fine because throughout like my games, as long as I played either 1 or 2, and then Arcanes, I would pretty much by the late game I would pretty much know where everything is in my deck.
Yeah, that's super fair. Yeah, you're basically running off-brand card jockey there. Yeah. So so you're saying you were struggling a bit with trying to have the correct quote unquote red count for Nobunaga. Then the question is, you've got 3 Percivals and 4 Zhao Yungs. So you could have swapped a Zhao Yung to a Percival, but it seems like you respected having a full 4 set of Zhao Youngs for that. Then.
Yeah, the Zalyuns just do a lot against like either card jockey or no limit because no Romel is gonna vanish it. A
Mhm.
Lancelot can't vanish it. It's just a body on board that says taunt. Your opponent has to run over this or use an assist rig or potentially try to bait out a spell. And people don't. People would assume like, oh, they're running end of turn. They're gonna spell cut it. I'm not gonna do it.
That's fair. Yeah, there's you're preaching in the choir over here as a Nova main that the Zhao Yung and the Typo are basically 90% of the early game of the Nova wall. So, yeah, Zhao Yung is I also think it's probably correct to run more Zhao Yung than Percival if you were tight on spaces. But then you did say Nobunaga, right? Like you're saying that was a very important card. Can you care to go into detail about how that was an important card for you?
Yeah, I basically got it off in the majority of my games. Like
Double crush, you
either
mean?
yeah, to either double crush or to bait out an Assistla rig. But it was like my star Nova killer.
Ah,
Um, cause turn 2, like I would open one lane or something. They 1 or 2 lanes. They would respond with either decapo to just stop 2 lanes of damage. They're like, oh yeah, 2 lanes of damage. I'm gonna stop that. Or if I just opened one, they would Tamago down. Okay, cool. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And then on turn 3, since they already used their Sisla rig, I'm like, if they had Tamago up, then well, Nova's a bit iffy there, but it does bait out something for me.
mm-hmm.
Or but if they played Bang Decapple early, I'm like, I mean, if they played the Tamago early, I'm like, okay, my Nobunaga's getting in because I can always clear 3 lanes on my turn 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if they decapo, 2 damage negated, but my Nobunaga's going in for double crush, and then the Glorigro's going in for double crush.
Yep, I mean you're right. That is sort of the trick, right? Nobunaga is very good in Hirana, but when I see Hirana as a Nova player, I'm not super worried about it because I know that they have a hard time opening up lanes in the late game. But what you're saying here is what a lot of Ray players also said, which is I can open up lanes no matter what in the late game due to my Elrig specific abilities, and the Nobunaga Double Crush will get there at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense going with the Akino's once a game ability. Like I said, Akino's once a game ability is a little tougher to pull off, and you've got to concede some amount of deck space to try to make it so that you can maybe get cards back into your hand to use that ability. But it is a very strong ability. It is a high reward if you manage to get it off.
Because it denies your opponent to enter. So like in the situation where like, oh, they were gonna respond to me, but now but they needed to enter. They were like expecting, oh, he's gonna remove 2 cards off my field. He's gonna vanish them, and it goes to my enter, and then I can respond. I just bounce it. They don't get the enter, and I have 2 free lanes to swing in.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you about this too, just because I know that you spoke a little bit over Discord about this, but you have a pretty, I think, competitive play group that you play with, right, at your local scene?
Yes, Turn Zero Games, which is owned by Steven Saw. Yeah, we have quite a few people at our
Mhm.
shop that actually made it to the top 16. We have Steven himself, who
Mhm.
got 7th. We have
Mhm.
August, who made 2nd. We have Maddie, who made
Mhm.
9th. And then there was me, who made 5th. And then we also have last time's champion, Leon Vo. Yeah, just a quick shout out to Oni Zhang and Billy So for sponsoring me and lending me their house so I can use Wi-Fi and not have crappy internet during ceremony and cut out and just get a DQ. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you guys are a bit of a powerhouse. And what city is that located in?
Los Angeles.
Nice. The LA scene is killing it. Then is what you're telling me.
Yeah,
Well, congratulations to your crew. I'm stoked to hear that you guys all took it seriously and all managed to grab some pretty heavy records. And to be clear here, Maddie was undefeated until if I remember correctly, the terribleness of Swiss kicked in and knocked
all the way down to 9th. Yeah.
to ninth place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I hear a lot of people saying justice for Maddie as the common thread, the common saying that I'm hearing a lot from this tournament.
Yeah, Maddie's my friend, so yeah, justice for Maddie.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we brought it up to the airtime. And guys, if you are listening and you haven't seen the other podcast that we put out, where Tiffany and I were discussing, some of the issues with the ceremonies, that is one of the issues that we only kind of briefly went over, but it was a serious thing. But it's cool, regardless, that you guys all managed to make it to pretty high top cuts from your local group. So and also cool that you basically brewed around some of the more competitive players in the US and it was able to get you this killer new tech kind of deck because again you're the only Akino player that's made a top appearance in the US at this point. So you got to understand that these choices that you made for your listeners who are listening in are actually pretty backed in some serious testing. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy going against um last time's champion Leon Vo with his Nova.
Yeah, you're not
Like
wrong.
every time I came at him and lost, I'm like, what can I do to beat him? How can I beat the champion himself? You know?
Yeah, and that's how innovation happens, man. Like I'm stoked that sort of like mindset helped you propel you to your fifth place win. And again, congratulations on that. Um, but moving towards the future, what are you looking to change out? We do have a new Akino on the horizon. There is a new one coming out in the next set. Are you have you looked at that one that was been previewed
I
on Facebook yet?
I did take a look at it and I think I can make it work, honestly.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your opinion. I'm putting out some deck techs later for my Series 04. But it does, to me, upon looking at that one, it does feel like it is a hair stronger than this Akino.
I think it's slightly stronger. Like I really think this Akino is very strong because it can remove 2 lanes,
Hmm.
like just straight up. But the other Akino, I feel like I can play it a bit more tempo.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just remove 1 lane each turn, and also play out the new cards like Exia and just turn off lanes. Just be very annoying
Yeah. So
because
so if it sounds like to me you're on board with swapping this Akino out for a new Akino.
I'll be testing it, but I think it will fare more against next set, purely because Exia is a thing, and this Akino targets for its once per game. So
Sure.
Exia is going to turn off a lane, but if I'm able just to remove a unit at the beginning of my main phase, like uh, I have 2 other lane removers as well to
Yeah,
help
and
deal
and
with it.
and for the listeners who don't know, Exia was just previewed on the Facebook for Wecross. It's a very, very strong card that you're basically going to see as a staple moving forward for the next couple of years, I'm sure, in Wecross. It's a super defensive Signy that turns off lanes when aggro tries to open up lanes. And definitely a good reason to be in white. So here's a question, right? You kind of alluded to it with the white heaven playmat, but are you looking to dream team on the next in the next set?
Yeah, I was looking and play testing around with Dream Team. It's very interesting. Not doing a double crush,
Hmm.
but it does open up like other avenues. For example, you can just play like 2 very relevant pieces. Um, for example, let's say if you're running double black and like white, you can play
Hmm.
the def deck, and
Yep,
it's
yep,
a
yep.
very strong card
Hmm.
to be able to just remove a unit, um, mill out your opponent, and just do unnegatable damage. It just really feeds into like the play that you don't really need to swing as much next set. So
Sure.
so so getting penlighted wouldn't hurt as much. Well,
Hmm.
that was kind of the idea of this deck too. I didn't like penlights, so my board does most of my damage rather than my low rig.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And you also open up the option to potentially doing like if you really wanted to get aggressive, you could do a Ange assist, which has basically the level 2 is White Heaven, and you can also still run White Heaven as your piece and just basically super open up board lanes constantly.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
cool.
sounds.
That's a great little view into the future that we're looking at. Is there anything that you're super excited for that you wanna talk about like as you think the next step for the Akino list?
Mm, well, I feel like next set is going into either you're an aggro player or you're a floodgate player. So I'm trying to like think around like techs for both, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Akino is able to just kind of stop the floodgate players or like play through them to the least, like because the difference between Akino and Hirana that I've seen is I'm able to survive my turns more turns than a Hirana player would. Like a
Mm-hmm.
Hirana would maybe like burn out like turn 4, and I'd be able to survive to like turn 6.
Got it. Got it. So you're saying with Floodgate, you're basically saying basically stalling out for a little while.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. I've never heard the term Floodgate before, so it's new to me.
Oh, it's like for example, like how Diagram has Madoka Clap, just down 3 lanes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just come to Floodgates like to just completely stop all damage that turn.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Um, okay, so I do have some questions, right? So some people are going to want to play this deck in their locals for the next couple weeks before the next set comes out. Do you have any advice for them? Do you have any sort of like turn by turn thoughts that you or a certain type of gameplay, game style that you're trying to go after, play style that you're trying to go after, mindset that you're cultivating while playing? What is your tips for people who are going to take this deck list that is on screen and try to run at their next locals?
Oh yeah, I actually have like a lot of. I put like quite a bit of thought about this because the deck's playstyle differs between like against what deck you're playing against. For example, Nova, you don't you don't want to have heliums in your hand. Heliums don't really do as much, but
Hmm.
they'll still be a body. It also depends on what you're playing. I mean, what your opponent's playing, like Signy wise. For example, if they play like a turn one Zhao and a turn one Percival, you would remove the Zhao and just leave the Percival alive, so you can Lancelot it next turn.
Hmm. Hmm. Makes
So,
sense.
yeah, so typically like my opening hand, I just want to see like hopefully double Zhao, but like if not, just any of my level ones, a Haniel, and at least one Servant. However, if I am going first, then I kind of want to see two, and then after that, like uh, if I'm going first, I will always remove I'll open up 3 lanes on the second turn, so my first swing turn,
Hmm.
and I kind of like built a damage schedule for this. If you do 2 damage per turn, you're gonna like win out by turn 4,
Yep.
and Akino is able to do that just by opening up 2 lanes per turn, and then just swinging in for like assuming your opponent hits 1 life burst out of the 3 swings. So like
Mhm.
first hit nothing, second hit a life burst, third hit it gets life bursted. So just only 2 swings in, and that's 2 damage, which is very detrimental and like great towards the schedule.
Yeah, totally. And it seems quite reliable with Akino.
Yeah, I feel like the deck is like more enter efficient than Hirana. Like anytime I'm playing against a Hirana, I just kind of see them like kind of low on enter. But like for me, I'm like sitting around against Nova. I'm like sitting around like 6, 7 enter. I'm like, huh, I have so much enter. And
Mhm.
then but really, the deck only functions like around like 2 to 4 enter, like at all times.
That makes sense. Yeah, totally. And it also makes sense to what you're saying, where you're saying you even value for if I mean correct me if I'm wrong here. You value deafening infernos more than rose quartz even.
Yeah, because it's just an early removal. Like especially against Nova players, you wanna see your Deafening Infernos a bit earlier, because like if they put up a typo or Zhao Yun, your Lancelot's not gonna get through. But if they play the blue white vanilla, it'll get through.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That makes sense to me. Um, and like you said, when are you trying to like what defensive turns are you trying to play your assist stamp and your assist Ray Majesty?
It depends on like what the board state is, what the situation is. But turn 2, like for example, if I went first, I'm level 3, they're level 2. They opened 1 lane, I will stamp them, and then
Hmm.
just completely nullify a turn. Either take if I have a guard, perfect. I'll stay healthy at like 5 HP from that point on, and then it's gonna be very hard for like a Hirana to burst me down before I burst them down.
Hmm.
Especially when they're like, okay, well, to do this, I'm gonna have to double Nobunaga. That is kind of like one of the other reasons why I play Ray Divine Majesty.
Hmm.
Just one time during a tournament, I got double Nobunaga'd for double crush, and I'm like, huh, if I take this, I die.
Yeah.
However, I believe in my life first, and I hit nothing, and I died. So to prevent that from happening, I play Raid Divine Majesty just to down 2 things
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
remove
Yeah.
a board.
Yeah, and again, most Hirana players would not expect Ray Majesty going into basically anyone. It's not a super well played card, although maybe it should be played more. Um, so I'm sure they were not expecting it, and when they probably activated double crush, thinking, all right, well, the only Ray that he's probably going to play is Absolute Zero, and that will stop one of these, but not both of these.
Yeah, and that usually that's the deciding factor. That I can stop one Nobunaga but not the other, and then I'm at 2, they double crush me, and their Glory Girl goes through, and I lose.
Yeah, that's fair. That's super makes sense. Well, all right then. I think that's everything. Unless there's any other closing thoughts that you wanted to leave our viewers with.
Um, yeah, I guess there are like a few other like plays that I've done during tournament and
Yeah.
ceremony where if I'm playing against Hirana, I don't really care for my hand size. I just care that I am stopping damage, so it is okay for me to like play Lancelot, get rid of their whole entire board, trash the Lancelots, and just replace them with Heliums or Zalyuns, just to have like the more defensive position, so
Mm-hmm.
they can't remove me back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you called it right. Like against as a Nova player, when I see people not attack into my 5K, it's the first thing I'm trashing it. If I can't enter charge it, I trash it because I'm like, I don't care about my hand size right now. I care about the defensive position. So yeah, that's a nail on the head there.
yeah, because again with Nova, if you fall like under like the threshold like 5 life cloth before your turn 3, you're kind of like in like the stickier position where your opponent can kind of just burst you down quicker than they normally would.
Certainly. Any other tips against any of the other decks that you might face against? We talked about Nova a bit, and we talked about No Limit a bit, but what about Ray or Card Jockey? Those seems to be the other two decks that have floated to the top.
Uh, so Ray, well, Ray is a bit more tricky. However, like you throwing out a double helium or just one helium on your first turn. I mean, well, on your level 2 turn is
Yeah.
really strong against them. They will struggle to remove it, or they're forced to use their assist lyrics. Like kind of like the main deck process with this was if I bait out my assist lyrics, I mean bait out my opponent's assist lyrics, they can't respond, and my damage gets to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I would put down a Zhao Yun a turn 1, and if if they used the Akino to bounce it back to my hand, I'm like, well, I just get to play it down next turn.
Yeah.
But and then they would only have their Hirana, which vanishes 1, level 2 or less, and then Helium would just really punish them. There is like, well, are you gonna remove me or are you gonna swing
Mm-hmm.
into me?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
against, I feel like Ray functions um, a bit like Hirana. However, it's like more defensive, so they're able to drag out like just one more turn. But I think it's okay because they don't have like a floodgate. They have 2 assist lords that stop 1 lane each. So if you open 3 lanes,
Mm-hmm.
at least if they decide to use both their assist lords, at least one of the lanes is going through.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention your next turn around, you've got the all clear sign, and you can pile in more
Yeah,
damage.
because in my final match, like a Ray player opened up 2 lanes against me,
Mm-hmm.
and it just took 1 Ray Divine Majesty to just goodbye damage this turn, and I just took 1 Glory Grow, and I stayed very healthy, and he proceeded to kind of just die next turn.
Yeah. Slowly appear off. Makes sense. What about Card Jockey? Any advice for that matchup?
Card Jockey kind of functions a bit like Hirana if they're just trying to play aggro. However, like I can't say much. I lost to Card Jockey myself. However, in that matchup, I feel like positioning is extremely important. Well, it's very important with this deck, like where you decide to place your units. because Akino's center ability. For example, if you place a Lancelot in the center, your opponent can't Lancelot your Lancelot.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So you kind of just want to like make it very awkward for card jockey. That's kind of like the playstyle where like their assist is either Mirage or Reverb. So if you open 3 lanes, then the Mirage doesn't really do anything. Maybe stop 1 lane, and the Reverb, however, you can always just play around that just by playing smaller units, like anything not 10k. So like at least 2 swings will go in if they play Reverb on you.
Mhm.
So in this matchup, like if you can open a lane, do it. However, if it's the center lane, do not throw your Arcane there. You can throw it into whatever close lanes, and then just force your opponent into the awkward situation. Do I open up that lane and take a damage, or because Arcane is very annoying to deal with, especially with the card jockey. I know someone was playing Burning Curiosity, and they typically do play Burning Curiosity now instead of End of Turn, even though I feel End of Turn was kind of better. But having an Arcane that's very hard to remove, it just serves as a very awkward position for a card jockey player.
Makes sense. So you actually said one thing, and it reminded me of one more question before we get to the end of this. You said the positioning matters a lot. Is there any sort of Signy you want to shout out that are like, these are common ones that I throw in that center lane because they become more annoying when they're in the center lane? I assume he is one of them because it no longer can be it can still be killed by No Limits, Deafening Inferno, but it can't be killed by Card Jockey's Deafening Inferno.
For that situation, I kind of like. It depends if the card jockey, or what turn the card jockey player's on. If they're like going into their turn 2, I don't get the plus 2k effects, and it's fine. But the helium will stay in the center if the opponent hasn't used punchline. If they have, then I put in any other lane, and if they remove it, well, they
Just
can't
body,
swing.
yeah.
Yeah. Typically, I throw like the for example, against Diagram. I didn't see any Diagrams, nor did I
Me
see them
neither.
in top 16. However, I know like throwing an Arcane in the center against either Nova or Diagram will turn off 1 damage from your opponent for the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, if you get discarded down, you have an Arcane center that's basically unremovable by Nova.
Mm-hmm.
You get to play top deck, and then, hopefully you get to skip fill the other 2 boards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. And then your Lancelot, like you said, becomes unreturned Lancelotable if you throw it in that center lane. And I guess just looking over here at your deck list, Folklore can become a 12k, which matters sometimes.
Yeah. Really anything that can get hit by, for example, if I'm playing against No Limit, I'm gonna leave my Arcane on the side because they can run it over regardless of what they put down, because here on a plus 2k on swing. So I would rather like throw my Athena in the center or my Rose Quartz, because they can't as easily deal with those.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. Okay, well, that's all really great advice. I think some people should start trying out Akino if they listen to this, since you've laid out some pretty good advice. Plus, your deck list is quite clean when you break it down into its literal parts. And maybe we should try out Ray Majesty more often, especially in decks that can draw a little bit extra, so that they can trigger the Ray a little bit more. But yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking to us about what Akino can do. Do you want to do the sign out?
Um, yeah. Hopefully you flip a life burst.
That's true, guys. May you always flip a life first. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
I'll see you all later. Don't forget to comment down below if you guys have any questions about Akino and what you guys think about Akino in the meta. Bye. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So yeah, I'll cut the thing there.